Welcome to A Play to Win Deck Tech, where we talk about decks in cEDH. I'm Dylan.
And I'm Cameron. This week we're talking about Jeska Ishai Jeskai, brought to you by Moxfield.
Begin.
Today is finally the day. We are here to talk about the deck that you've been playing for a long time. Quick reminder, as always, there are many different ways to build Jeska Ishai. There are many different viable versions to make this deck. This is Cameron's deck. This is how he chooses to play this deck.
That's one of my favorite things about this deck, is that there are so many different directions you can go into. You can play like a more mid-range or a stacks version of this commander pairing, but I personally love this as more of a Storm commander.
Storm is definitely a great way to do it. Let's talk about what these two commanders are and why Storm is a good option for them.
So Jeska Thrice Reborn is a legendary planeswalker that costs 2 and a red, and it enters the battlefield with loyalty counters equal to the number of times you've cast a commander from the command zone this game. Its 0 ability lets you choose target creature, and until your next turn, if that creature would deal combat damage to one of your opponents, it deals triple that damage to that player instead. Holy cow. Its -X says that Jeska deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. It can be your commander, and it has partner.
There are so many words on Jeska, and almost all of them are relevant.
Now, Ishai Jeskai Dragon Speaker is 2, a white and a blue for a legendary creature, Bird Monk. It's a 1/1 flyer, and it says when an opponent casts a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Ishai Jeskai Dragon Speaker, and of course it has partner as well.
We're playing cEDH. It's more than likely that your opponents are going to cast 2 spells on each of their turns, and if that's the case, Ishai is basically set up to be a one-shot killer because Jeska does really good.
Exactly. So when you have Jeska's 0 ability target Ishai, you can make Ishai triple its damage output so that with a minimum of 6 counters, that can immediately eliminate someone from the game right there.
Because of commander damage, if someone has 21 points of commander, we don't have to explain commander
so
damage.
please don't remove that rule, Sheldon. This commander pairing is just an absolute powerhouse put together.
So what about some pros and cons of this deck? Why would you play this deck? Why wouldn't you play this deck?
So pros, if you like a deck that you're able to kind of tweak and tune to your own liking and to your own strategy, this is a great commander pairing to be able to do that. If you hate stacks, this is a great deck because you can just use the bird in stalled games to take out the stacks player and then immediately win on your second main phase and storm off from there. This is also a great deck if you really like Voltron and don't really have a way to use that in cEDH, because it's really not a viable strategy in cEDH a lot, but Ishai kind of gives a little bit more of that casual feel when you're playing, so if you're looking for that kind of a vibe, this is also a nice strategy. Some of the cons: you have no mana in your command zone. You have no card advantage in the command zone, and that right there is a humongous downfall. You end up mulliganing a lot to find ways to get extra advantage because your commanders aren't able to provide you much of any. Other cons to this deck is that there are a lot of stacks pieces you have to look out for. I do run a lot of onboard interaction to kind of help mitigate that, but every single graveyard piece hits you. Drannith Magistrate's another thing you have to look out for, so you do want to make sure that you are aware of things that can happen.
And what's really good about these guys is that the bird isn't really even your main plan. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to designate any cards for the bird. Your opponents are just going to make it big. All you have to do is cast your commander.
That's why I love this. There's games where you can, without using Jeska, take people out of the game with a 21/21 bird. That is not necessarily impossible. As you mentioned, it's not the main win condition of the deck. So one of my favorite things to do with Ishai is actually distract the shit out of my opponents so that way they think they're going to lose to this bird when in fact it's my combo that's actually going to kill them.
So Ishai just kind of acts as a distraction until you get to your combo, which is some type of infinite mana. How are we winning with this deck?
We do want to get Jeska's minus ability going so that way with infinite mana we can cast Jeska an infinite amount of times and deal each of our opponents an infinite amount of damage that way. There's 2 main ways to get infinite mana in this deck. The best one is Auroriok Salvagers and Lion's Eye Diamond, the Bomberman combo as it's known. Essentially what you're doing for this combo is with both these in play, you can crack the Lion's Eye Diamond to pay for the Salvagers ability. That way you can return Lion's Eye Diamond back to your hand, recast it, and keep paying for itself until you're able to generate an infinite amount of any colored mana that you'd like. The second way to make infinite mana is with Baron Master Wizard and Dockside Extortionist. This one does have a prerequisite in that you need to have 6 artifacts and enchantments on your opponent's side of the field in order for this to actually gain you infinite mana. But if you're able to put that together, you can use 3 of the treasures to have 2 pay for Baron's ability and then sacrifice 1 to return Dockside, use the final 2 to recast Dockside.
And then as long as you make 6 treasures that way, you'll be netting 1 additional treasure each time.
Yes.
So those are the ways that you're getting infinite mana and finishing out the game. But how do you set that up? We're playing cEDH. You can't just play 2 cards. You need 1 card to set it up, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we need 1 card win conditions. And honestly, the 1 card that does it best is Underworld Breach. This card is in a category of its own, really. This is really what this deck is focused around, is really trying to exploit the ability to get things out of our graveyard repeatedly.
But Underworld Breach does have a little bit of a weakness, is that needs a little bit of a setup, right? So what are your setup cards to get Underworld Breach going and actually winning you the game?
So we have 2 of these 1 card win conditions that allow us to get set up for that. The first one is Intuition. What's nice about Intuition is that it's instant speed, so on your opponent's turn, you can cast it and you can create a pile of Underworld Breach, Savine's Reclamation, and then Lion's Eye Diamond. And you basically set up a scenario with this pile where your opponent is forced to give you an Underworld Breach.
Yeah, no matter what, they can either straight up give you the Underworld Breach and then you can cast it and use the Lion's Eye Diamond to make more mana and cast the Intuition again from your graveyard and get, some other things. Or if they give you the Savine's Reclamation, you can bring back Lion's Eye Diamond and Underworld Breach. Or if they give you the Lion's Eye Diamond, well, Savine's Reclamation has flashback, so you can use that Lion's Eye Diamond to crack it and make mana for the flashback cost, bringing back Underworld Breach again.
And then you can basically set yourself up from there to pull out a win.
Yeah, Intuition can find any 3 cards and put them right in the graveyard, and if you have Underworld Breach, that's really good.
Oh, look at that. Salvagers is only 1 card that you need to already go off with one of this line's cards. So that's our first one. We have a second one with Spellseeker. Now, if you watched the channel recently, you might have seen this specific combo start to happen. As long as you have 2 colorless, a blue, a white, and 2 red mana, you can set up a win with just Spellseeker.
Now, you also will need, I think, maybe like 6 cards or 9 cards in your graveyard because you'll have to use Underworld Breach to do some things, so that is important to think about also.
But by the time you get to this mana requirement, you've already cast a bunch of spells, there's a bunch of stuff in your graveyard, and it should be pretty simple to set something up from here. After you cast Spellseeker, the first target that you go get is Ephemerate. From there, you'll cast Ephemerate, targeting Spellseeker, and the second card that you're going to go get is the Final Fortune. Notice how you need that specific mana to get all this. You'll cast Final Fortune and then go to the Final Fortune turn, and on your upkeep, Ephemerate will come back. You'll be able to cast Ephemerate, target the Spellseeker, and on your upkeep, be able to tutor Enlighten Tutor to your hand from there. You still, on your upkeep, are able to cast Enlighten Tutor and then go search for Underworld Breach from there. Now you have Underworld Breach as your draw for turn. You can cast it. Well, what do you know? Ephemerate is in your graveyard, and you can use it to hit Spellseeker, and now Brain Freeze is in your hand.
At this point, Storm is pretty high. You can mill yourself out, and this is going to be how you're going to be finishing most of your games with Underworld Breaches, getting Brain Freeze, acquiring a big Storm count, milling yourself for basically your entire library. Then you can cast any cards you want and win in any way that you want. How do we get there? What are some of the signature cards of this deck? What's the game plan? What are we doing until we get to this point?
So this is the most typical Underworld Breach deck that you could kind of come together. So really the most thing outside of these cards that we've already talked about that are like really specific to what you're doing is really just like Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, Wheel of Fortune can act as card advantage, kind of. I mean, in this deck, you have really no way to break parity on it, so when your opponents are drawing 21 and you're drawing 7, not the best bet, but you do have a lot of ways to silence your opponent, and with Underworld Breach, you can really get through a lot of your deck.
That's the thing. Like, if you are able to set up a win with silence or a silence effect, Wheel of Fortune becomes a lot prettier then, because it's another way outside of Brain Freeze that you're able to kind of help through your graveyard, through your Underworld Breach, or really just kind of propel you into a win from there.
And it also is just a powerful card. I like to think of it as like a mulligan helper. Sometimes if you go really, really low on a mulligan, you can find like land, mana crypt, Wheel of Fortune, and that's like better than a lot of 7s,
and
I think.
And you know what? Just the ability to be able to go land Mana Crypt Wheel of Fortune on the play turn 1, that just
You can be
is
very disruptive.
Right, and I feel like that's even enough upside to even just not even have to justify it outside of there.
We get to mulligan a lot, so we can make it happen.
Exactly, yeah. Burgi is another game plan card that does kind of everything you want it to. The front side of Burgi makes you mana when you really need it. I've actually had scenarios where Baron Dockside wouldn't have won me the game without the Burgi mana in play. The flip side of Burgi is the Harnfell Horn of Bounty, which if you don't have ways to get through your deck, Harnfell can do that too. So your commanders don't have card advantage or mana in the command zone, which are two things that cEDH decks really like to see. So Burgi can kind of act as a secret commander in the deck and do both.
Now seems like a great time to talk about our sponsor, Moxfield. Moxfield is without a doubt the best site for brewing and building your Magic the Gathering decks. They are constantly adding new features like enhanced tagging to help with organizing your deck and collection, drag and drop across views for easier sorting, and one of my favorite features, which is the compare function, which lets you easily compare decks to see the differences. Above all else, Moxfield is easy to use and looks great. Make sure to use Moxfield like all of your deck lists, just like we do, otherwise I literally won't be able to read your deck. What about interaction and protection? On the stack, on the battlefield, how are we protecting, how are we attacking?
We run a hefty amount of counter spells as you would in a blue deck. You run Mental Misstep, Force of Negation, Force of Will, Pact of Negation, Fierce Guardianship, and Deflecting Swat as my free or potentially free on the stack interaction. You have Swan Song, Dispel, Flusterstorm, Spell Pierce, Miscast, Red Elemental Blast, and Silence as the 1 mana options in the deck.
And Silence kind of being a multifaceted counter spell / interaction in the right. I mean, it's right. It's an on the stack interaction. That's the perfect way to put it.
Exactly. Mana Drain and Muddle the Mixture act as our 2 mana interactive pieces. I love the extra mana you get from Mana Drain, especially when you need it to kind of help you go off on a big storm turn. And Muddle the Mixture also acts as a tutor in the deck too. We really don't have a lot of tutors in this deck, so finding ones that we can use that can also be used as other things are incredibly helpful.
And a 2-drop is a very great number for you to find things. It finds Underworld Breach, it finds Brain Freeze. There's a lot of 2-drops in the deck that are very crucial and important. Dockside Extortionist.
Everything else that we have is kind of interaction that happens on the board or about the board. You have Swords to Plowshares. I don't like leaving home without it anymore. One of the big draws to white, in my opinion. A Braid, also a card that we just joke about never cutting, and it's just very powerful and very versatile. Chain of Vapor gets a lot of hate in Jeska Ishai specifically because it's really bad if you have a huge bird that can also threaten to have someone just Chain of Vapor it back to your hand. But what I think gets overlooked about Chain of Vapor all the time is that you can still use the chain on your abundance of mana rocks to be able to storm off from there, and that doesn't get talked about enough. So Chain of Vapor definitely not worth cutting.
And also, if you're a political player, you can use Chain of Vapor to trick your opponents into thinking that they want to get rid of your bird, allowing Chain of Vapor to get rid of 2 things just in time for you to untap and win with Breach. If you're really dominating the board and you bounce someone's thing, they may say, okay, I'll bounce your board, haha, I got you, and you go, okay, I don't care about that, I'll bounce your other stacks piece that was also messing me up, and then on my turn, win with Underworld Breach because I don't really care about the bird.
Also true, 2 for 1 in that scenario, which is nice. Alchemist Retrieval's a card when it was printed, I said was made for this deck, and I stand by that statement. I love having this as a bounce spell in the deck.
If you're playing Dockside Extortionist, it's so great because not only is it a great permanent removal to get rid of anything you need, but it also bounces your own Dockside for 1 red mana, which gets you a lot more mana.
Cyclonic Rift is also a very nice interactive piece that just also gets you out of humongous boards that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get around. Draenith Magistrate is a 2 mana on the board interactive piece. Haha, Cameron, I know this is funny to say that, but that's literally what it is. This is just interaction and helping slow your opponents down so that way you can keep your game plan going. Grand Abolisher, the same way. Silence, this is an on the board silence for 2 mana right there. Gilded Drake is Commander Stealer, and that's basically what it's primarily used for. Snap is a free way to get Dockside Extortionist back into your hand, very similar to what Alchemist Retrieval does, but can also bounce stacks pieces. And then you have Ranger Captain of Eos, which is just a nuts card.
Proving to be like an all-star, one of the best white cards that has been printed in, I don't know, years, I think.
It really is. There's so many 1-drop creatures. Well, There's a handful of one-drop creatures that you want to go get that are really good with this, and just being able to interact with your opponents randomly or protect yourself for a win is really nice.
It also, like, a lot of decks just can't win through an onboard Ranger Captain. Like Cody, there's Storm decks, you can't even start going off because the thing is there.
Right? It's just going to stop you right in their tracks. So love having Ranger Captain as an option.
Okay, so how are we finding our win? How are we getting to the win condition?
You don't have a lot of tutor options in this deck. So we talked about a couple already in Enlightened Tutor and Muddle the Mixture. Gamble is one of the better ones as well. You can use it to fuel your Underworld Breach, but being able to get anything in Jeskai colors is really nice. Mystical Tutor is also really good. Lets you go get Intuition. That's my favorite thing to go get with it. Second copy of that is also very good. And then Imperial Recruiter is another tutor in the deck. Imperial Recruiter lets you go get Spellseeker for your 1-card win line. It also lets you go get either Dockside Extortionist or Baron Master Wizard, and hilariously, it gets you the Salvagers too. So it literally finds you every single combo in the deck. Don't leave home without this card in Jeska Ishai. Everything else in the deck that helps us find things is a draw spell of some kind. We have a bunch of cantrips: Gitaxian Probe, Brainstorm, Ponder, Preordain. Really good in a storm strategy.
Real quick, what do you think is better, Ponder or Preordain? Cameron and I were talking about this earlier, and we really didn't come to a conclusion. I'm a little bit more towards Ponder. I think maybe he's a little bit more towards Preordain. But
I'm prepared to be wrong, but I want to know
I am
why
too,
I'm
to be
wrong.
honest.
Yeah. We also have Mystic Remora, not leaving home without that. Esper Sentinel, the fish stick right there. Dragon's Rage Channeler counts because it does fuel Underworld Breach and kind of help us fix our top deck. Really like Dragon's Rage Channeler in this deck too.
Both of those are also findable by Ranger Captain, which is important because Ranger Captain is also card draw now.
Exactly. Oh my god, that's why it's so good. You have Rhystic Study, auto include, and then I'm trying out to Fairy Master of Time. I mentioned in the video a couple weeks ago that I did take out the Dual Caster Mage combo in this deck because it's really just kind of like an extra way to win that I don't think I need anymore. I'm playing Teferi as one of the cards in its place. I haven't had a chance to try this, but just being able to have another piece of card advantage is really nice. And I know that you have to loot, but that does fuel Underworld Breach, which is really nice. And in a lot of scenarios, phasing out your Ishai can be really good too, or maybe if you want to keep your Burgi or your Fish Stick around, you can do that as well. So gonna try Teferi out and see how that goes. Our final piece of card draw is also a lot of other things. It's Phantasmal Image. Most recently, this was a Timna, and it was really nice there, but it can also be a Dockside Extortionist and be used for mana.
It's just Phantasmal Image is just helpful in a lot of ways, being able to copy anything on the board. Your opponents are playing many powerful things, so Phantasmal Image is probably going to be a powerful thing.
Where do you categorize Phantasmal Image when you categorize your decks?
Honestly, if I'm playing it in a Dockside deck, I think of it as mana. Even though I'm not always copying my own Dockside, I'm often copying other people's Docksides. For me, though, Phantasmal Image took the place of Gilded Drake because I wanted to copy Dockside rather than take the Dockside, because that's not very good, and Dockside's like the most common creature ever. But I don't know, it's really just like value. Phantasmal Image is just like value. It's the cheapest clone that we have, and your opponents are playing good things. So like 2 mana for anything that your opponents are playing is just good in a format where your opponents only play good things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so how are we paying for all of this? What's the mana situation look like in a Jeska Ishai Jeskai deck?
So we have a couple of different ways that we are getting mana. Most of it is through mana rocks, but we do have a couple of rituals that we play as well. Simian Spirit Guide is the first of those rituals. Free one right there. This is one of the greatest Jeweled Lotus decks I've ever played in my life. My first game with this deck was off of a turn 1 Ishai from Jeweled Lotus, and maybe that's part of the reason why I fell in love with it. Mana Crypt, Mox Diamond, Mox Opal, Lotus Petal, Chrome Mox are all other free mana rocks that you have in here as well. You have Rite of Flame as a 1 mana ritual. You have Ragavan. Ragavan is another interesting way to gain mana, but the extra mana that you get off those treasures is very valuable. Sometimes its other ability can also hit a really nice card for you too, but it's not really something that you rely on.
It being a 1-drop also makes Ranger Captain Avios also mana if you need it to be.
Gotta love that Ranger Captain. Oh my god. You have Soul Ring and Mana Vault as other 1 mana rocks right there. Our 2 mana rocks are Grim Monolith, Felwar Stone, Talisman of Progress, Talisman of Creativity, and Arcane Signet right there. A lot of options for that. And then Jeska's Will as our final ritual as well, which can also help churn you through your deck if you need it to too.
What about lands? Any good lands?
I run 29 of them actually. 28 of them are good. I run a bunch of 5-color lands, actually a lot. Command Tower, Mana Confluence, City of Brass, Exotic Orchard, Tarnished Citadel. We don't really have a lot of ways to use our life total in this deck, so Tarny C is actually real good here. Gemstone Mine helps fuel Underworld Breach in that hilarious scenario. You got every fetch that you can play in this deck as well. You have Tundra, Plateau, Volcanic Island, Steam Vent, Sacred Foundry, Hollowed Fountain, and the Jeskai Triome as well. I know, Ender's Play tapped, but there's a lot of times where if you don't need the mana, you can like hold up a counter spell and then fetch for Volcanic Island, or you could hold up a counter spell and if you don't need to use it, fetch for a 5-color land instead. And if you end up taking a Molda 6 or a Molda 5 and this ends up being in your hand, it's like one of the easiest cards to put to the bottom, so it doesn't even really feel like anything. Those might not be really great reasons to play it, but I have yet to be punished, so I'm gonna keep playing it. We have some other really good Jeskai lands in Training Center, Sea of Clouds, and Spectator Seeding, that full cycle that we are able to play. Shivan Reef is another nice way to get blue and red mana, especially since we don't really use our life total. Otawara Soaring City is an amazing include in this deck. As if I didn't run enough on the board interaction, I have another piece right here that doubles as a land. Ancient Tomb, great Ancient Tomb deck. Oh my god, being able to get Ishai out just that much sooner is all that matters. Gemstone Caverns is in the colorless land section because that's what it is most of the time. And then you have a basic island, which is in here because I hate losing to things that I could have control over, and I am including Blood Moons in that scenario.
All right, so we've gone over every single card in the deck. Let's go over to Moxfield so we can check out some of the stats and maybe do some test hands.
Great.
So for stats, this is mainly a blue deck, 42% blue, 23% red, and 15% white. As far as mana costs, for the most part, you are living around the 1 and 2 CMC cards, which is where most of cEDH is going to exist, with a couple 3-drops.
Especially when you're trying to storm off and cast cheap things.
As far as card types, you have 15 creatures, 8 sorceries, and 28 instants. That's the main card type of the deck, obviously, because it's a blue cEDH deck. 1 planeswalker, 14 artifacts, and 3 enchantments, and of course the 29 lands.
I think it's actually 15 artifacts if you include Esper Sentinel, which is helpful for Mox Opal.
Before we get into the test hands, let's figure out what the pot is just so we know how to evaluate our hands. Let's say we're going third, and our first opponent is playing Cody Turbonaz. Second one is on Grist, then is us, and then following is Animar Harvesttide.
Ooh, here's a con we didn't mention. If your pod has a Grist player, this deck sucks. Sucks is a strong word, but let me tell you, Grist has put a thorn in my side.
First hand, Grim Monolith, Brain Freeze, Phantasmal Image, Dragon Rage Channeler, Soul Ring, Mana Confluence, Talisman of Creativity. This hand slaps. What do you think?
This is a snap keep.
Oh
my god.
What do you do with this hand? What's your first thought?
Mana, right?
Yeah.
So you go turn 1 Confluence into Soul Ring, and then I think into, I want to say, Creativity into DRC.
Big time. Yeah, that's what I would do for sure.
Because I kind of want to keep Grim Monolith around.
Yeah, I think so. I would go for the turn 1 DRC, set up like that, and then kind of whatever you draw can help you find your next land, maybe?
Phantasmal Image could be the draw that I need. It could be the other mana that I need, right? Phantasmal Image is going to be great here.
It's important to note, though, this hand doesn't have a second land and doesn't have any card draw.
There are a couple of alarms that have to go off in your head, right? So, like, Cody's on the play. You have no interaction in your hand.
That is a very good reason to not want to keep this hand.
Right. This hand is still like real powerful, and like the part of the reason why Dragon's Rage Channeler is in here is because it will help you get through some stuff, and that's kind of another one of the reasons why I want to sandbag Grim Monolith here too. What the hell, right? Someone else has interaction.
Yeah. I mean, it also is probably good to note that we are playing against Grist, who is playing black-green, no counterspells, and Animar, who's a creature deck, most likely through and through, not a ton of counterspells. Maybe this hand is a little greedy to keep Cody at the table, but I mean, our top deck's probably gonna be good, right?
Maybe Cody's hand sucks, right? Maybe Cody goes land pass.
Let's do a fresh 7. We're greedy. We're gonna keep that last one.
This
Let's
was
do
a
fresh
greedy
7.
keep because we got starry-eyed, but it worked.
Let's do another pod, different pod.
Because why? Because that pod was so warping.
Yeah, I don't want to play against Chris and Cody anymore. Let's do a different pod. So let's say we're going first this time. It's us first. We're playing Jeska Ishai. Second is Tim Natana. Could be anything. We have no idea. Blood
True.
Pod or Turbo Naz. Next up is Tasigur Control, because why not? And then after that, oh, look at that. Grist again. Shit.
It's fine. Grist can be in the pod. Grist is still allowed.
Let's take a look at our first 7. Another Soul Ring hand. These hands are probably going to be good. We have Soul Ring, Flusterstorm, Exotic Orchard, which hilariously doesn't make mana on our first turn, Snap, Hollowed Fountain, which fortunately does, Muddle the Mixture, and a Mox Diamond, which gives us something to do with that stupid Exotic Orchard. This hand's actually good. Not only do you have the fast mana but from before, but you also have a ton of interaction.
I have all the interaction that I need, and I have Muddle the Mixture, which... What does Muddle Go get? So Muddle goes and gets a 2-mana thing. Muddle typically is
probably
a dockside fetcher.
Yeah, probably dockside in this situation. If you had more of the pieces for Breach, maybe Breach. But right now, I'd probably be looking for dockside. Realistically, in my head, I think this hand is land, Mox Diamond, Soul Ring, Jeska on turn 1. But maybe that's wrong. Maybe you just hold up instead, hold up interaction and play Ishai in turn 2 for turn 3 Jeska.
The problem with running out naked Jeskas is I don't love 1 as much as I love 2.
Yeah, it really doesn't do anything right away.
It would scare people from playing Mana Dorks, but Grist plays Mana Dorks. Timnatana probably plays Mana Dorks. There's no way this is Timnatana ad nauseam. I'm assuming it's Blood Pod hardcore. And then
Tasigur plays a couple too.
Tasigur would play a couple too. Okay, turn 1 Jeska could be good.
I would actually say maybe you hold off. Maybe you wait for them to play their Mana Dorks so you can kill them.
Here's something else we didn't really talk about with Jeska. You don't care if Jeska dies.
That's true. You can just cast her again. She'll have more
How
loyalty.
did we not talk about this before? You don't care if Jeska dies. You actively want Jeska to die because that means that Jeska evaded you damage, killed things.
Probably stopped a Tymna from drawing cards or something. So stops one of these creatures from gaining value. All right, those were 2 great hands. Let's see if we can get a ban head. Let's see if we can go to a different pod, do another hand.
All right, different pod. What's our new pod?
New pod is we're going second this time.
Okay.
First up is Kenrith. Next is us playing Jeska Ishai. Third is Bruise Thrasios. And fourth is going to be Bergi.
We know what Bergi's doing. We're assuming that Thrasios Bruise is Dawnwaker.
So yeah, probably I would assume
probably
some type of
Dawnwaker. I think is the first thing that your mind goes to.
I think normally Kenrith is on Reanimator. If you're gonna do Ad Nauseam, I think Cody's better. If you're gonna do mid range, I think Thrasios is better. I
also have to be aware that it could be a stacks build too.
It probably could be. Kenrith could be anything, and in a blind pod where you don't actually know, that's probably one of the more scary things about it, especially in your opening hands. But let's take a look at our first opener.
Find a generically good hand. That's what we're looking for here.
We got Wheel of Fortune, Mental Misstep, Mox Opal, Gitaxian Probe, Mox Diamond, Gamble, Wooded Foothills. This hand looks bad, but I think it's surprisingly close. I'm not sure. I don't know if I would keep it, but my thought is Gamble can get Mana Crypt. If you can only find another land, so you can cast Mox Diamond and also have the Opal in play on turn 1, that's really good. Unfortunately, you don't have that second land. You do have 2 draws to find it, but I think statistically, you're probably not going to. I think you kind of have to mulligan this hand, but it's close.
I think it's close too. I love that Git Probe is an extra card, right? It's like a redraw, but I don't think a redraw is powerful enough. This hand is missing too many pieces, and if there's anything that I learned from Limited is that you can keep hands that are missing 1 thing, but you can't keep hands that are missing 2 things a lot of the time. I think this hand is missing at least 2 things.
This one is Exotic Orchard, Force of Negation, Enlightened Tutor, Swan Song, Silence, Miscast, Ragrin, Triome.
That's the name of that card.
This is a hand where the Triome sucks.
This is the first hand I've seen I've seen maybe ever where the Triumph sucks because this
hand sucks because both your lands don't work on the play.
Well, Kenrith could play a 5-color land and an Exotic Orchard's great. I didn't even look at most of this hand. I'm going to 6
We're
already.
going to 6.
Yeah.
This hand sucks. Okay, so we have Anai 6. This is Steam Vents, Mox Diamond, Sacred Foundry, Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, Sea of Clouds, Fellwar Stone. This is all mana this hand is. We have a Mox Diamond, so that's good. This hand can, let me actually do a little bit of math here. You could go land, Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, float 1, tap the Grim Monolith for 4 floating, for Fellwar Stone, and then you can Mox Diamond, pitch the land, and then you'll be able to cast Ishai on the first turn?
I'm trying to set up a scenario. So your bottom is clearly Sacred Foundry. I think that's a pretty clear bottom here. So long as Kenrith either has a white or a blue land out, we can cast Ishai on turn 1.
That's pretty good.
This is pretty good. We're hellbent.
Yes.
So we have Kenrith, Tasigur,
to probably mid-range or control decks.
Yeah, no. This is not good. This is honestly one of the most tempting hands that you get in this deck, is like hands that get out Ishai really fast.
You get to go before Bergie, though, which means Bergie is going to cast every spell in Bergie's hand on the first turn.
Yes, but Tasigur or Kennerith have an incredibly high chance of being able to get rid of Bird. And if they get rid of the Ishai, then your game plan is nothing. You have a tapped Mana Vault and you have a tapped Grim Monolith, and they're not helping you whatsoever anymore.
But we're going to 6 right now. Is this better than a 5?
I think there's a lot of 5-card hands that could have card advantage in them that I think are worth going to over just turn 1 Ishai, no backup.
All right, let's go to 5.
Let's try it.
So this hand is Plateau, Shivan Reef, Spellseeker, Dragon's Rage Channeler, Jeska's Will, Fellwar Stone, and Brain Freeze. This one's safer. It's for sure safer. Much less interesting, though. If you keep this one, you're probably pitching Brain Freeze and maybe the Spellseeker.
That's honestly what I'm on. I was between that or Jeska's Will, but
it's super close. And then you go turn 1 DRC, turn 2 Fellwar Stone Scry, and then hopefully turn 3 you can do something.
I think you're almost obligated to keep something like this because Dragon's Rage Channeler does count as a value creature for you here. It's very slow. It's not great. This is a hand that I would keep almost out of necessity, but maybe we should see what a 4 looks like.
Fuck it, man. We'll go to a 4. This hand's boring. Boo. Send it back. Let's go to 4.
Right.
Okay, so this one is Hallowed Fountain, City of Brass, Fierce Guardianship, Plateau, Brainstorm, Gitaxian Probe, Flusterstorm.
Okay, well, we have to keep this.
Yeah, so this hand is not the most interesting, but I think it's definitely a keep. I think it's Gitaxian Probe, Flusterstorm, land. Maybe just because you'd want to hold up, maybe you don't need to hold up Flusterstorm right away. Maybe you want the Brainstorm, but you don't have a fetch land, so if you storm, you're locking yourself. I think it's probably City of Brass, Hallowed Fountain, Gitaxian Probe, Flusterstorm.
If it's not probe, it's you're just waiting on Brainstorm until you get something to look at. But you're definitely the land go until I get to something else that's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a world where I don't think there actually is a world where you keep Fierce. You're definitely getting rid of Fierce because you have no way to cast your commander early, and you're definitely getting rid of the Plateau because that land sucks.
Yeah, and what we actually did was keep that last 5-card hand.
But this one has Flusterstorm, which that one didn't have any interaction. I feel much more comfortable keeping a low hand with some form of interaction rather than a less low hand with
a bunch of nothing in it. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at Patreon, like our $50 patrons.
New Sixers shirt, George Allen, Byron Wang, C, Khwaji Ahamid, Anime Titties, Jacob Depp, Reese Uker, Unforeseen God, CZ, Michael Ballou, Jan Wildfang, Adrian Grimm, Sleepy Jarvis, Swampy McGee, Peter Larson, Jormags, Ugly, Moxfield, and Baby Jeebus.
Check out our Bonfire store for our t-shirts, sweatshirts, and I think the hats should be back up, so go check that out too.
If you want to check out any of the cards today or buy the entire list, you can do that at the Moxfield link down below.
Dare you. I dare you. You won't. I dare you.
Right in Moxfield, you can click on the links on there and just buy the cards right from there and go to TCG Player or wherever you want to buy the cards.
Check out our Alter Sleeves affiliate link for 5% off your order there.
If you want to pick up any Dragon Shield product, you can do that at our Dragon Shield affiliate, which will also help support the channel.
And PlayToWinMTG.com still has our OG playmats in stock as well as our coins, so check that out too.
Thanks for watching.
See you next time. That's what your voice sounds like? I've never heard him before. His voice is wildly high.